Good morning, everyone, and welcome to IT Lawco's ongoing sessions that guide you and train you on different areas of IT policies, law procedures, and many other more to come. Today, we will be focusing on one of the specialist areas that I really deeply enjoy, and that is business continuity. The skill set for business continuity is pretty interesting in that it's not a typical legal skill set. However, there are legal implications for it, and there are various certifications that you can undergo to become a business continuity professional, standards by ISO, BCI, and several other institutes. The approach that I'll be sharing with you today is based on work that I've done for various clients in the business continuity space. So, from business continuity policies and plans and procedures to developing a comprehensive business continuity program, doing a business impact analysis. And so, there are quite a few components to it. But for today's session, we'll be focusing on the policy itself, and it will be aligned with the relevant ISO standard on business continuity, as well as the BCI's best practice guidelines, which I'm certified in. So let me start off by sharing my screen. Remember, the session is for you, so feel free to ask questions as you go along and pop your comments in the chat, and we'll take it from there. So, what you'll get from today's session is really an understanding of the essential components and best practices for an effective business continuity policy. We will highlight or emphasize specific or the significance of business continuity, as well as look at their role in actually maintaining operations as well as products and services during disruptions or interruptions, however you may define it. Now, the context for business continuity, this is often overlooked, and so I thought I'd spend a bit of time just delving into the context. And by context, I mean, why do we need business continuity? And the reality is that businesses, it's in the title, businesses need to be able to continue. And it is essentially a leadership function to ensure, from a corporate governance perspective, that the business does continue. And continuity includes resilience in the event of unexpected but also expected events, so events that are unexpected and that you can prepare for. However, with business continuity, the focus is largely on unexpected disruptions or interruptions to the business. But ultimately, this is a leadership function. It is often delegated to the IT team to develop a business continuity plan, and that's it. However, the policy is often lacking, and so it plays a key role in setting strategy, as we'll come to find. But what exactly is business continuity? So the definitions vary from business to business as well as standard to standard. However, the gist of it is that as an organization, business continuity assists in ensuring that your critical business functions continue before, during, and after a disruption. Now, typically speaking, when people speak about business continuity, they only speak about during and after, but before is also a critical component because that's where the policy plan and business continuity program fits in. And ultimately, the goals of business continuity are to, number one, minimize the impact of that disruption, to maintain operations, and then ensure quick and effective recovery. Recovery shouldn't only be quick because it's in the event that it compromises the medium to long term operations that you may want to still continue. But let's move along. So I've been using various terminology, and it makes sense for me to define it so that I create clarity for you and that you understand the approach from which I'm coming. So typically, there's much confusion between what a policy, plan, procedure, program, process, practice, all of the P's, what they effectively mean. And I've written a post on it, which you can have a look under the insights section on the IT Lawco website. The difference between policies, plans, procedures, processes, programs, and practices. It's couldn't believe I just said that. But essentially, for this purpose, policies set guidelines, they set direction, and they effectively commitment from leadership. So they consist of these formal statements that the leadership take to say that these are the guiding principles for our organization on this specific topic. And later on, when you encounter different scenarios and you're unsure about the approach to take to that scenario, you revert to your policy to understand, well, what did we agree that we're going to do when these types of events happen? What are the guiding principles we need to follow? So, in the context of business continuity, the policy is the key document that sets out the purpose, scope, context, and governance of your organization's business continuity program, which we'll define in a bit. Now, plans are generally speaking more detailed, tactical steps for achieving specific goals or objectives. So those objectives that are listed in the policy, the plan is the map to achieving that. They outline these plans typically set out what those plans are, and they may also consist of procedures that consist of steps, resources required, etc. Typically, an organization combines the policy, the plan and procedures document in one. However, whatever decision you take regarding that must depend ultimately on your organization and its unique requirements. And now with BCPs or business continuity plans, they're typically done by IT teams or the operations teams or combination of subcommittees in larger organizations. But are really, they should be a leadership function that's delegated, or not delegated, but designated rather, to various stakeholders that the plan impacts, as you'll uncover as we go forward. Now, lastly, I wanted to clarify what a program is. So a program generally, like a business continuity program, a compliance program, a data protection program, they're all ongoing cycles of activities that an organization takes to actually implement the policy and those strategic objectives. And so they will consist of the plan that you have, but they'll also consist of multiple projects. So, for example, although you have a business continuity plan in place, you may want to you'd probably, the plan would maybe indicate that you need to set up a project where you check whether all of your offices located across the various jurisdictions have the right security measures to protect critical infrastructure within those specific countries or regions. Or they may focus on specific products or systems that your different divisions offer. So those projects, the plans, all of those together give effect to what's set out in the policy, essentially. Now, business continuity program implements that business continuity project, and this all happens according to the business continuity management lifecycle, which we'll share a bit about. But for now, what I need you to know is that policy sets direction, it provides leadership guidance, it sets principles, whereas a plan sets out the tactical steps to achieve what is in that policy. And the program, on the other hand, effectively encompasses everything that helps the organization achieve what's in the policy. Programs are different in plans that they are more extensive. They include projects, etc. Now, let's go along to the business continuity lifecycle. And actually, before we do that, I just want to check if there are any comments, questions coming forth. No, not yet. Great. So, to establish a business continuity management system or program within your organization, you need to follow a life cycle to do so. And there are various life cycles out there. This is BCI's one that I follow, the Business Continuity Institute. And essentially, it would consist of analysis where you understand what your organization is and what it needs and what its high risk areas are. Then it would consist of solutions design, or actually embedding uh, what you've uncovered from the analysis. And without going into too much technical detail, I just say that the analysis is typically known as a business impact analysis. We've helped several organizations with them. They include me and my colleagues. They include assessments that need to be sent at an organizational level, at a departmental level, and then at a product or services level. And they essentially provide a snapshot of the organization's gaps. Think of it as a gap analysis, right? And then based on those gaps, solutions are designed as part of the organization's program. And those solutions, there needs to be various steps to enable them and validate them as they go along. But embracing business continuity essentially requires that you look at them from all those aspects. So think of it as analysis, as analyzing the current state or seeing what's happening in your organization. Design or solutions design, how you actually plan to solve that. Enabling solutions, really implementation, and then validation, validating that you're still checking to see that you're still meeting those strategic requirements set in your policy. Now, in establishing the business continuity policy, there are various, I'd say, factors that you need to consider. And these factors vary from organization to organization, but I've distilled it into its essence. And essentially, to establish a BC policy, you need to set intentions and direction. And this is expressed by your leadership team and is done in your policy. It will also consider, and so these intentions would say, this is our leadership commitment to business continuity. And we'll get into that in the guiding principles. But for now, just know that the policy needs to set intention and directions. Then you also need to, and please I need to apologize. My cat is running around in the background, so it is moaning. There is not a baby yet. But as I was saying, so when it comes to boundaries and requirements, the policy also needs to set the scope and conditions for the business continuity program that your organization will be adopting. Implementation reasons need to be included, which explain why the program is being implemented and adopted. Then the guiding principles that your organization will follow from a business continuity perspective. It vitally, which most policies often exclude, and that's really about having a system for performance measurement. And that's where you establish the metrics that you will adopt to effectively measure your organization's business continuity program and its performance, right? Now, from a risk perspective, organizations may exclude the metrics because it would hold them accountable to a specific standard. But remember, this policy is your internal document. It doesn't necessarily need to be disclosed to your customers, service providers, etc. There may be some instances where customers may require it as part of their third-party risk management procedure, but then those specific elements of the policy which are confidential can be redacted, or there could be different versions of the policy. Now, but ultimately, the metric is for you, for your purpose to engage the status of your business continuity program. Then program maintenance, that's really about, okay, so how are we going to build this program? Who's responsible for what? And how can we actually maintain it and ensure that it's ongoing, like resource allocation, for example. And then lastly, there should be a consideration for goods or services continuity. So when most organizations think about business continuity, they only think about disruption such as an incident like a hurricane or a cyber attack. And they look at the organization's operations generally and their physical premises, but they often ignore the actual product and services specificity. And the reason I say this is, in your agreements with customers, you would typically have an obligation to ensure that you have taken appropriate steps to give effect to business continuity. And this is becoming more common and common. And if you do not take those steps, then you cannot claim that a specific event, if it was avoidable, is a force majeure event or an event beyond your control. And so in this case, again, it's vital to ensure that you do take steps relating to the goods or services you offer your customers and ensure that business continuity is part of the consideration for those specific goods or services. Now, you would see on my screen for establishing the BC policy, there's guiding principles at point 4. We'll be deep diving into those guiding principles, and this really forms the structure for an effective business continuity policy, but they are customizable to your organization. So the guiding principles really is that it needs to consider a definition of business continuity that is relevant to your specific organization. And remember that definition can be narrow, or that definition, could be broad. And so really the definition you adopt needs to consider, well, the governance, risk, and compliance obligations of your organization as well. Then it needs to contain a statement from your leadership team, so your board, your governing body, to say that they're committed to ensuring business continuity in line with their corporate governance obligations. And so those statements need to align with the appetite of your organization for, well, not the appetite, but rather the standards that your organization adheres to from a corporate governance perspective. So, for example, if you're based in South Africa, King 4, complying with King 4 and specifically Principle 12 on IT governance, but generally the operational resilience requirements of King 4 as well. Next, it would contain defined objectives and scope, and that's really for the Business Continuity Program, as well as the roles and responsibilities. So who are the key people in your organization that are going to, well, who's the responsible person who's going to own business continuity? That may be your chief operations officer, it may be your CIO, it may be various people, maybe a subcommittee of people, but they need to be defined and ideally have one person to be the lead. And then you can have the different roles and responsibilities supporting the broader person achieve the objectives. And obviously this needs to include incident response as well. Then there are often related policy standards and legal regulatory requirements regarding business continuity. And they are the incident response policy. They may include your ICT governance policy and various other policies. And so they need to be referred to and reviewed together to ensure that they're aligned and to remove items that are not necessary. They also need to identify interested parties, so your stakeholders that would be impacted by the policy, your methods, so how you will measure your program and the frequency for doing so. Typically, I'm sorry, not your program, the policy itself. So are you going to review it annually, every second year, every third year? And what are the metrics for when measuring success of the policy? And then the methods you're adopting for sign-off and comms. I just say that, look, please, although I've mentioned a lot of guiding principles and what to establish, that doesn't mean your policy needs to be like 40 pages long. I've seen horrendous business continuity policies and plans that would probably take an ordinary person like you and me maybe a few hours to read. And when incidents typically happen or disruptions, you don't want to be able to need to read through a document that is extremely long. Instead, you want to layer information. So don't make it too long. Focus on the essential information and then expand as it. Layer your information as you go along. Now, the last part that I want to deal with is really when do you need to review and update this policy? And so these could either be at the predetermined levels in your policy or after significant changes. So these changes could be organizational changes, product and service changes, etc. And your risk approach to your organization may change. So you need to, for example, because you may be servicing clients in the financial services space, you would need to adjust your risk profile versus when you serve clients who aren't as risk averse. And then also when there are changes in market conditions, when there are changes in environmental considerations, and then when you often acquisition, merger, or disposal, and that's really to align with the holding company's best practices, and changes to your products or services, which I've mentioned, or changes to your dominant vendors or the dominant third parties that service you, and then lastly, due to changes in legal or regulatory requirements. Now, that's been business continuity or the policy in a nutshell. Really, the objectives for today was to get you to understand its essential components and the best practices and highlight how important it is in supporting your organization, setting guidance for your organization achieving its objectives. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to pop it in the chat. Otherwise, pop me a message, slide into my DMs via LinkedIn, and we can have a chat about it. Otherwise, have a lovely day. I'll be sharing a post about the topic in a bit more detail. Chat soon.